Welcome to the basketball party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the anti-Vikings. All they do is win preseason games. We'll talk about last night's game, the preseason thus far, and so much more. Wolves on today's Minnesota basketball party.
This is Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Timberwolves talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota basketball party on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday. It is the Minnesota basketball party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Wolves talk every Wednesday with your favorite panelists. We've got Reggie Wilson, KARE 11 sports director and anchor. We've got Ben Beecken, Locked On Wolves daily host. Check him out on the Locked On Wolves feed and get the audio of this show on the Locked On Wolves feed as well. Jack Borman, Canis Hoopus, managing editor and writer, and Ron Johnson of the Ron Johnson Show at 3Ron Johnson on X, former NFL and college receiver. Gentlemen, the Wolves are 4-0 in the preseason. We're going to get into the Timberwolves' success thus far and how they beat Maccabi Ra'anana last night at Target Center. Let's talk Tim Connelly's offseason grade as well. Now that the regular season is around the corner, let's take stock of what we saw this past offseason from the GM. We're going to get into our favorite FanDuel Wolves prop of the upcoming year. And Naz Reid grew 2 inches? What? We'll react to that little revelation as well. But let's start with Reggie Wilson. Minnesota Timberwolves, a 138-111 win against Maccabi Ra'anana last night. They are 4-0 in the preseason, and this was like the third NFL preseason game. I mean, this was the end of the bench playing. These were Iowa guys playing last night. Big game for Luka Garza, big game for Daishawn Nix. What did you take away from last night's preseason thriller?
That the bench is good, the depth is good, I guess. I don't know what to take from it. It was a good showing for guys like Minot, for guys like Lenny M. I think they showed some good things, but I thought it was weird though. Like, first home game of the preseason, and you just decide to just go no starters with this. You're like, nah, that's okay. That's okay. They're not on our level. We won't do that. It was interesting just to see, all the guys just in street clothes. It's like, oh, okay, that's great. That's great. But I thought, like I said, I thought we saw some good things from Leonard Miller, guys like Luka Garza. I think if anything, it just gives them confidence moving forward. That they could do something if called upon. In the rotation moving forward. But 4-0 in the preseason. If you're into that kind of thing, is what I said last night on KARE. Like, if you're into that kind of thing, you love it. You love it.
Already load managing the starters, just weak stuff. What could the score have been last night if they played all their guys?
Oh,
they won by 27 with like the 13th through 17th guys on the roster. Ben Beecken, what'd you think?
Yeah, I just did a whole. I'm into that sort of thing because Locked On Wolves is daily, so I did a whole post game podcast on this one. Josh Minot was fantastic. That's my biggest takeaway. Is he was the best player on the floor in this game. I know Garza had the 30 points, but Josh Minot 23, 6 and 6, 3 blocks. Looked every bit the part of a rotation player. I mean, realistically, he is probably the 11th guy on the team this year at the start of the season, but he's auditioning for, hey, am I the next man up if and when somebody gets hurt? Or what does this look like a year from now if, and this is a topic we'll get to at some point, but like, say Karl-Anthony Towns gets traded, could Minot be the starting 4 next year? I mean, that's the sort of thing that he's auditioning for because this team is so stacked right now, 1 through 10. And I mean that it's a really deep team. And this kind of proved that point to what Reggie was saying. I mean, 23, 6 and 6, really good performance. Garza was solid. Leonard Miller, as Reggie said, 22 and 15 off the bench, had that activity level that you're looking for. I think he's going to be another guy who was playing for, can I be called upon if this team has injuries, foul trouble, et cetera, during the season, a team that has designs on, home court advantage this year, can I be that guy? And then the other thing was the battle for the last roster spot, potentially that last two-way spot. And, there's several guys who played well. You mentioned Dacian Nix. He had a nice game. Matt Ryan was a little bit more up and down. I mean, I think he's still competing for a two-way spot. I like Trevor Keels a lot. I mean, now we're talking like deep bench guys, but like he's a legit NBA defender. I mean, there's a lot of depth on this roster, and it was good to see some of those guys get a chance to play. But the biggest headline for me here is Josh Minott. And then I would also, Leonard Miller and Luka Garza also turning in good games.
Ron Johnson, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna go, and I hate to do this on Iowa Beecken week. I shouldn't be saying anything about anybody from Iowa besides I hate them. But Luka Garza. I mean, when you look at the bigs and not, I mean, the 30 points again. That I think karl-anthony Towns probably could have had 40 against that team. But when you look at Luka Garza play, I think he should have probably shown them what type of rotation they can also have with the bigs and what type of production they can get from their bigs. Now, I don't know how it can work with Rudy and Cat, but I feel like Luka Garza, and we'll see where he pans out, where he makes it out on this roster. Fans really loved it. I think the most points since karl-anthony Towns 2019, 33 points in the preseason. So this is the thing. People can say whatever you want about the player of the year before. Every player has a chance to get better, and I think Luka Garza, he's shown he can do it in college. Clearly, in Iowa, he was a really good player. This might be another one of those Walker Kesslers. Like, do you want to give this kid some minutes to see what he can get out of him? Is it worth it? And I think that's going to be the key. This is the toughest part about any major sport, is figuring out what guys you really want to go into the season with. And I think Luka Garza showed that, one, bigs still matter in the NBA. But then also for the Timberwolves, how can that offense still work with the ones being out there? Like, can they get that same production out of their bigs night in and night out with the ones out there? And I think that's what Luka Garza showed. Like, the bigs still matter, and how can you get the ball down there? Now, we'll see with the Bulls. Like, we saw the Knicks game, we saw the Mavs game. So that's where, and we'll talk about that more later in the show. Like, where do they pan up in the West with their potential starting lineup? But yeah, no, that's what I took away from it. I think the bigs still matter, but you got to get production out of them.
Yeah, I am so impressed to where Luka Garza is now compared to where he was in college. I never thought he would really have a chance as a pro, and he's put himself in position to definitely be a contributor, if not here somewhere. Jack Borman, let's give you the final word on last night's game.
Yeah, sticking with Luka Garza, I think, he makes an interesting case as a guy that could potentially receive one of those Gupta special contracts that we've seen go to guys like Naz Reid and Jalen Noel and Josh Minott in the past, where you get that 4-year partial guarantee the first couple and then non-guaranteed the last 2 years, as a guy that could fill that final roster spot for the Wolves. I know most of it has been positive here, but I think the fact that Wendell Moore Jr. just continues to look a little bit uncomfortable out there on the floor is something that certainly has to be a little bit troubling. I know that he didn't have the best run in summer league, had some flashes of really solid play, some other stretches where he didn't look quite comfortable out there, is the word that I keep coming back to. But also Leonard Miller, I think, is a guy that fans should really keep their eye on. Kind of like what Ben was saying with the whole next man up thing with Josh Minott, is that Leonard Miller is a guy who I think is already going to be able to defend multiple positions at the NBA level. And this team, for as big as they are, has really struggled to rebound. And I think it's come from that wing position where they just haven't gotten the rebounding they need. And if Leonard Miller were to get some backup 4 minutes, if someone like Kyle Anderson got hurt, or they made some type of move that shook up the wing rotation at the trade deadline, is a guy who I think you could just plug and play and say, hey man, go play the way you normally play, which is play as hard as you can, have a nose for the ball, fly around on defense, and just be a monster on the glass. And guys like Leonard Miller and Luka Garza are kind of in a tough spot here and Josh Minott too, and that they're probably too good for the G League, and that they've all played pretty extensively in the G League and have showed that they're pretty far above the level of the G League, but just aren't necessarily quite good enough to get consistent run in the NBA. So it'll be really interesting to see how the Wolves handle those guys in their development, and how those guys continue to try to get better, just because it's hard to do that, I guess, without getting a ton of live in-game reps.
If I could jump in real quick on Jack's first point related to Garza, this point I think was made on the broadcast last night, that Garza last year as a two-way player was not eligible to compete in the postseason. And so when they had the injury, obviously Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels and Kyle Anderson getting hurt, the idea of a Gupta special, if you will, for Garza makes some sense, because if you believe he's a legit fourth or fifth big in the NBA, and you're not, he's a different type of big than Leonard Miller, obviously, then that frees up another two-way spot you could use on one of these other guys. And we saw the Wolves early last year kind of cycle through guys in two-way spots early in the season. That would be a way to, like, hey, if we think he's a legit NBA big, let's give him a deal, keep him around. That way he's eligible to play in the postseason this year, and backfill that two-way spot with somebody else. Maybe they let Matt Ryan go, and then they have two-way spots to fill. So there could be some end of roster movement. And so that is another reason why this game was important for somebody like Garza, who's going to have a role. The question is it a two-way deal like he's on now, or does he get elevated to the full roster?
And the one other thing that I jump in there with too is if they do open up another two-way spot or two. I mean, they've been bringing in a lot of big guards this summer between, Alexander Walker, Shake Milton, both guys that are 6'5", can play the 1 and the 2. And you look at guys like Dacian Nix and Trevor Keels are both big dudes at that guard spot. And that's obviously pretty different than what Jordan McLaughlin is. So that's also something that I'd keep in mind there too.
Wolves Bulls to finish the preseason tomorrow at 7. Wolves going for the undefeated preseason. And if they accomplish that, we'll give them a medal. They debut a week from today, regular season at Toronto, Wednesday, October 25th. We're going to get into Tim Connelly's offseason grade after this, now that we can take stock of all that happened the past 6 months. First, a word from Birddogs. Let me tell you something very important. Birddogs are the only pants you need. Truly. I mean, they're so versatile. You can wear them out and about. You can lounge around the house. You can go to the gym, go to the golf course. You can wear the shorts to the pool. They are fantastic. They keep you warm in the winter months with that liner that is so cool and so unique to Birddogs. Birddogs have the anti-stink sweat-wicking fabric as well. They are unbelievably versatile and comfortable. I'm wearing them right now. I'm always wearing them. I love them. I've also got the Birddogs tumbler. And if you want to add to your collection of things to put beverages in, you can get the Birddogs water bottle. Birddogs.com/lockedon. Promo code LockedOnNBA to get a free water bottle with any purchase. Birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Promo code LockedOnNBA. Birddogs water bottle. You can have your coffee from the Birddogs tumbler, and then you can go to the gym. You can hydrate with that Birddogs water bottle. Check them out. They're so comfortable. They're so fantastic. They're so versatile. They're Birddogs. All right, guys, off-season is pretty much in the books for the Wolves. Let's go to Ron Johnson to kick off this talker. Tim Connelly's off-season grade.
I mean, honestly, the preseason doesn't give you a lot in the NBA. But I will say I got to give him like a B. This is the reason why. Like, I was a fan of blowing it up, but I'm not a fan of blowing up Cat. Like, I don't think you can really do it. I like Cat, Anthony Edwards. I like those two. I thought that should have been the core, and then you build around those two. The Rudy Gobert for all the first-round picks. You get rid of Walker Kessler. It is what it is. We have to move on. I'm not going to, cry over spilled milk or sour grapes or whatever people say. But I'll give them a B. And this is why. When you look at, again, the fact that now that you give these guys additional time together, like if they had blown it up too soon, I think people might have said, okay, you really screwed this one up. But to give them another chance, one, they did make the playoffs. They did show flashes, like the games I went to last year, like Detroit early on. It looked really good early on with like Mike Conley driving to the lane, throwing an alley-oop to Rudy Gobert. And then you see Cat come down and be able to back a guy down. And then you go back to Mike Conley, and then the guys condense the lane. He takes a little step back, shoots a mid-range jumper. I think that offense can work long-term. But again, it's going to be health. Can Cat stay? Because I think that was like Cat's first game back, and then he didn't come back again for like to the playoffs or something. So it's health. Can these guys stay healthy? Can these guys not shoot themselves in the foot, quote unquote, and get hurt doing something stupid? Can they stay on this court together? Because I do feel like Anthony Edwards has shown he is the guy in this league. Like, he's made the plays. He's shown the highlights. He has the aggression. He's talking the talk. Can he walk the walk? So I'll give Connelly a B because I do like this core. We'll talk about how they match up against the rest of the West, but I'm a big pickup basketball player. And so that's what I feel like this team has. This team has the ability to every night look at the mismatch and then say, okay, we need to attack the mismatch. And that's what good teams did, like the Bulls, like the Lakers with Kobe. They would just attack the mismatch. And Phil Jackson, when he created the triangle offense, it was attacking the mismatch. Whoever is out of place, you attack it. Not saying they need to bring the triangle back, but you do have 3 legit players. You might want to figure that out with Michael Connelly Jr., Anthony Edwards, karl-Anthony Towns, and then Cat be kind of like the guy, or not, sorry, Rudy Gobert be the guy in the back end. I do like it. And then the other pieces, Wendell Moore Jr., I've really been hoping for him to come alive. Basketball, if you're not completely, I mean, we think about guys that mentally just can't get it because I'm not mentally strong enough, I can't handle it. I think that's what maybe we're looking at with Wendell Moore. He has to get comfortable in this. But the rest of those pieces, I like it. But we'll see how they do during the season. That's the key about basketball, man. Like, you could put a great team on paper and then they not get it done. And I think that's the key for this.
We've got a B from Ron Johnson. What's your grade, Jack Borman?
I had an A- here because I think you also have to consider the fact that the Timberwolves did sign Anthony Edwards to that 5-year max contract extension. They did bring back Reid, which is really important just from a sake of, just an asset perspective. Everybody loves Nas. He's an awesome player. But then too, like when the financial, problems really hit after this season, you'll be able to flip Nas if you feel like you can't retain him financially. So that's a really important thing. And I think Shake Milton is going to really help this thing go on both ends of the floor. We've already seen that he can play seamlessly with any of these 3 big guys that they have in the rotation, can defend multiple positions. And then 2, I don't think we can, underscore the fact that some of the draft picks that Tim Connelly got in that deal that also netted Mike Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he then turned around and flipped to move up and select Leonard Miller, which, was a move that was really, really well received around the league. So, and then too, when you think about a guy like Jalen Clark, who they selected was a consensus 1st-round guy before he tore his Achilles last season at UCLA. And those are just the types of swings that you need to make when you've got little financial flexibility. And I think, the only thing keeping this from an A or an A+ from the Timberwolves front office perspective is that Jaden McDaniels contract extension still isn't signed, sealed, and delivered. So if they can do that before we tip off here next Wednesday, I think that it'd be hard not to give him an A, especially because you're able to keep this thing together and find a way to put yourself in a really good position to be one of the, if not the best Timberwolves teams in franchise history.
And we talked extensively about that McDaniels extension on last week's episode, if you want to go back and listen. Reggie Wilson, your grade.
Yeah, I give him a B as well, just because, for everything Jack and Ron said. I thought it was interesting that they basically, I wouldn't say traded, but they basically like gained Shake Milton and said goodbye to a guy like Jalen Noel, who, we thought was an ascending player. He's a little bit of a streaky player. He can ball, but I guess they just felt like they could move on from him. So that was an interesting decision to me. I just realized he's with the Sacramento Kings now. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, cool. Wish him well, but I think, as Jack said, like they signed Ant to a long-term extension. They signed Nas. I think this was just. I think if Connelly made a decision to blow everything up, I think it would have been maybe a little too hasty, just because he only gave it a year, and then Cat missed 50 games last year. So you really didn't get a chance to see how much things could develop. So I think he's given it another year. Like, okay, let's see if we can turn this thing around, if we can balance out the scales a little bit and reach our full potential with my idea when I made this trade. And then kind of go from there. So I think he's banking on this still kind of working. And then we'll see maybe next offseason what he decides to do with some really big decisions that he has to make. But for right now, he's still Pat. He got a chance to improve on some of the depth. I mean, we saw, basically all the backup guys and some of the depth pieces that he got, beat the team from Israel yesterday. So give him some credit. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how the rotations go, but he put the guys in place. Also lost guys like Taurean Prince in the offseason as well. So, he put some guys in place, and we'll see how Finchie coaches them up.
So we've got a B, an A-, and a B, and Ben gives us our final grade.
Yeah, I have a B+. And Reggie mentioned Taurean Prince, and that was the name that didn't come up to that point. But he basically, outside of course, the Jaden McDaniels extension not being done, essentially this offseason came down to letting Taurean Prince go, or letting go of Taurean Prince, I guess, more accurately, and bringing in Shake Milton and Troy Brown Jr. to backfill those minutes, and then also Jalen Noels, but I would put Nickeil Alexander-Walker kind of in that same bucket. So, like, even though he was a deadline acquisition, we could fudge that a little bit and say Alexander Walker, Shake Milton, Troy Brown Jr. are replacing Taurean Prince and Jalen Noel. And I think that's a clear upgrade. And Taurean Prince might be in a vacuum. You could argue he's the most functional player of those five, maybe the best player, certainly knows his role, and he's a known quantity, which is why I, kept me from getting up to an A, because we know what TP could bring. There's also the locker room, the intangible component. Troy Brown Jr. had a career shooting year last year. Can he do that again? Now, he's probably the 9th or 10th guy. He was the one rotation player that did play on Tuesday night in the 4th preseason game. Is he still going to shoot the ball at an above league average clip? Can he be a plus defender? And we think we know what Shake Milton is too. But is Taurean Prince the best defender of that group? I mean, we could make that argument. So can Shake Milton and Troy Brown Jr. and then also Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I guess if you include Alexander Walker, he's a better defender than Taurean Prince. But the point is, can those three cover up what Prince and Noel brought last year? I think the answer is yes. I think letting Prince walk to bring in both Milton and Brown was smart. It gives the roster some more versatility, more overall flexibility. And then assuming that McDaniels extension does get done, I mean, this thing could easily be an A. But I thought overall, not blowing it up, to Reggie's point, I think was the right decision, because you may have to next summer. Like, let's give this another run. You made the Gobert trade. Let's see what you can make of it. I think overall it was a strong offseason.
And I don't think we're going to realize this move this year. We're not going to know how good it was. But moving up to pick 33 and basically giving up nothing to the Spurs and keeping your pick in the second round, so getting 2 second-round picks and getting Leonard Miller, I don't want to say for free, but for pennies in the draft, was a great move. That could be an unbelievable move in a couple of years, and I still don't understand why the Spurs were so willing to just kind of toss that one away for future seconds when they got to surround Wemby with something cheap. But hey, it's not my decision making. Popovich is probably playing 4D chess, but that seemed like a really good move to me as well. Plenty more to get to, including where do the Wolves stack up in the Western Conference and the best Wolves FanDuel prop going into the season. Let's talk Western Conference, though. No more Dame. Dame is in the East. He goes to Milwaukee. Portland might not be a contender. I think there's a lot of contenders, though, in the West. I think it might be a bloodbath. It might be a lot of parity. It might be tough to get to 50 wins. Unless you're the Nuggets and you're going to steamroll everybody, it's going to be hard to win night in and night out in this conference, with a lot of teams really trying to put their best foot forward. So let's start with Jack Borman this time. How do the Wolves stack up, you think, against the elites in the Western Conference?
The word I put was competitive, in that I think that there's no excuse for the Timberwolves to not be competitive with the teams like the Suns and the Nuggets and the Lakers and some of those teams up there at the top. And the reason being is that, they've got 3 really strong perimeter defenders in Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Anthony Edwards that you can put on any, really good perimeter player. You look at the Suns, you could put McDaniels on Durant, you could put Anthony Edwards on Bradley Beal, and you could put Nickeil Alexander-Walker on Devin Booker and feasibly, remain competitive there. And they have an elite rim protector, and they should be able to play pretty much the 4, main defenses that you'd see in the NBA, whether it's just straight man, a zone, and at the level, pick and roll coverage or a drop coverage, effectively, given the versatility and length that they have on this roster. And then offensively, you've got 2 guys who could give you 30 points, 40 points on any given night. You have a playoff or a point guard with a lot of playoff experience, and then you have 2 bench guys who have really proven that they can be dynamite scorers off the bench, and then just a fill-in stopgap Swiss Army knife in Kyle Anderson. I think this Timberwolves team is as deep, if not deeper, than any team in the Western Conference. It's just a matter of whether their high-end talent, their starters, are going to be able to gel at the level that you'd see in Denver or potentially in Phoenix or LA or, pick your team out there. So, I could see this Timberwolves team being a better regular season team than a playoff team, considering that depth and if other guys are resting and taking nights off. So it'll be interesting, but competitive is the word.
Reg.
I kind of put them like 4 or 5. Like I'm looking at the standings. I think, the champs are still the champs. So you give them the benefit of the doubt. So I put Denver up top. I put the Lakers right there behind them because, that's my squad. Then you look at teams like the Suns. You look at the Warriors, who basically are just kind of standing pat. They're just going to keep riding with the guys that got them there and, just continue to hope that, their chemistry and talent level continues to help them surge. I mean, we are talking about a team that's a year removed from winning an NBA championship. So, I guess that still has to mean something. But then I kind of put the Wolves in there with the team like, like I said, 4 or 5. You think about a team like the Clippers who, have a healthy PG and a healthy Kawhi and, they're going to be dangerous. But, I put them over teams like the Grizzlies who are going to be missing Ja for a considerable amount of time to start the season. They were jockeying with the Thunder last year. I think they'll be better than them. The Mavericks, I think they'll be better than them. So, and then I guess, you still have to watch out for the Kings as well. So I put them like 4 or 5 or something like that in the West just to, because of the talent that they have and the depth that they have. I think they're one of the most deep teams in the West. You look at a team like the Suns, who they've basically made a decision to, go top heavy. And then you're like, okay, when KD, when Book, when Bill are out, like, not really sure who to look to, what to, they traded a guy like Aiden. So, I'm interested to see how those things kind of shake out. But I think, as Jack said, yeah, competitive is good, but I think I can put them in that top 4 or 5 in the West.
I don't know if I missed it, but listening to you guys talk about the elites in the West, didn't hear you mention Golden State too much. Are we thinking that sun has set on that dynasty?
It definitely hasn't set. I'll jump in and go if it's my turn. But
go ahead.
When I look at it, like I was thinking that the whole time everybody's talking, I didn't hear anybody talk about Chris Paul to the Warriors, and people thought it wouldn't work. This is why it will work. Chris Paul really is not he doesn't care about scoring. He can score. He can shoot when he needs to. Chris Paul's biggest issue was the playoffs. Every single year, no matter what team Chris Paul played for, if they were in the top whatever and they made the playoffs, he would get hurt. And then we'd be talking about, okay, here we go again. He did it with the Suns. He did it with the Rockets. Every time they had a chance to win, Chris Paul would get hurt. Well, now he can be a true point guard and doesn't have to be that secondary scorer. He has Clay. He has Steph. He has Draymond. All they did was basically replace KD, which is a ridiculous scorer, with a guy in Chris Paul willing to pass the ball now. You get rid of a guy in Jordan Poole who might have took shots when he shouldn't have because he was trying to, look at the baddies on the sideline like, all right, let me get a shot off because these girls are here today. You don't have that in Chris Paul. Chris Paul does not care. Chris Paul is going to play the game you ask him to play. He's a ridiculous passer. And so I'm going to put the Warriors back up in 4. Like, I think the Warriors can be fighting for that top 4 spot. You look at the Nuggets. What can the Warriors do the Nuggets can't stop, which is outside shooting. Now, if they miss, they don't have rebounders. And I think that's going to be the key for the Warriors. If the Timberwolves play them, same thing. When they miss, you got to make them pay for missing and make sure you get those rebounds. Because I know we have props coming up talking about the prop bets. I know the rebounds for me, that's the one I wanted to really look at. And I think like it can be done. But I'm going to put the Timberwolves, I'm going to put them as the 6 right now. I'm going to start low. I'm going to put them as a 6. Only reason is because I think the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, the Kings, the Suns, and the Warriors have it kind of figured out. The Timberwolves, I think, are right behind them at 6, and then I'm going to put the Clippers below them. Unfortunately, sorry for you, Reggie, but I got to put the Lakers below them.
Come on, man.
And I'm a LeBron guy, but the only reason I'm putting the Lakers below them is the same reason for a lot of other teams. They're top heavy. After LeBron and AD, because we know AD if a fly lands on his knee, he's going to be out for 2 to 3 days because it was too heavy of a fly. Like, there's something to that too with him. So LeBron without AD, we see what that team is. They're fighting for the 8th spot in the NBA or the 7th spot. With AD, they're a top 4 team, but can he stay healthy? Like, I know Charles Barkley and everybody's waiting for something to happen to Anthony Davis for him to put on street clothes for the rest of the season. But that's why I put the Timberwolves at 6. I think they can fight for 4, 5, 6. But again, it comes to them as well with health. Like, if karl-Anthony Towns goes out again for something, like, they're going to be back in the play-in game at 7. And that's the sad thing about this team. But I do think that they are a top 6 team in the West. I think they're a playoff team. Playing the 3, to me, if it was going to happen again, my guess is the Suns will be a 3. And I think the Suns without DeAndre Ayton against the Timberwolves are very beatable when you think about the bigs. Now, KD, he's a unicorn. I don't know what you do there, but I put him at 6.
All right, Ben Beecken. I'm still waiting for someone to come out hot here and say the Wolves are a top 3 team in the West. You're going to go there?
Kind of, yeah. Like, kind of. Let's work. I'll do that. Yeah, for you, Sam. So Sam, reckless. I think you mentioned the word bloodbath, and that's what the West is going to be. I mean, like, last year there were 7 teams between 40 and 45 wins, and the Suns were the 4 seed at 45 wins. I mean, like, remember, it came down to game 82 to decide if the Wolves were going to be the 7 seed or the 8 seed, or I guess it was the 6 or the 7. I think that's right, 6 or 7 or 7 or 8, something like that. And yeah, 7 or 8. So, like, it literally could be divided by a game any direction. And so I've been saying kind of what Reggie said. I've said on the show a bunch on Locked On Wolves, they're going to be, top 4 or 5 is where they need to look to be. I did see this morning, though, John Hollinger at The Athletic did his top of the West projections, and he has the Wolves in a tie for 3rd with Phoenix, and said he officially put him as a tie, but said technically his projection had them a few tenths of a win behind Phoenix at number 4. So, I mean, we could stretch that. I was going to say 4 or 5, but we could stretch it and say 3 or 4 in the West. I think it's the top end of this team absolutely could be. I mean, Memphis was the 2 seed with 51 wins last year. And the West is just going to be, it's a war of attrition on some levels. And we've already talked about how deep this team is. Jack mentioned, they could be a better regular season team than a playoff team because of that depth. I think the Kings are going to, regress a little. They're still a good team, but like, they were a bad defensive team last year that's going to catch up with them at some point. Phoenix, yes, top heavy, I think is a good way to describe them. The Clippers and Pelicans have obvious health issues all the time. The Warriors are going to be good, but how good? The Lakers are going to be good, but how good? The Thunder are going to be better, but how much better are they going to be with how young that team is? So you could tell me 3, you could tell me 7. They're going to be, I think, on the higher end of that, because I do think this is a really deep roster. And if the high end talent is really as good as we think that it can be, and namely Ant, this could legitimately be a top 3 team in the West. I think officially I'm going to say 3 or 4 is probably my most realistic best case for the Wolves.
Well, speculation is one thing. Vegas is another. We're going to dive into FanDuel, see what they're saying about the Wolves win totals or alternate win totals, and we're going to pick our favorite Wolves prop going into the season at FanDuel. They've also got a great new promotion going on at FanDuel right now. If you're a new customer, you can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets deposited straight to your account. That's guaranteed. Win or lose, bet 5, get 200. That's 40 times your money. You can bet NBA. You can bet NFL. You can take that bonus money and you can bet spreads, player props, over-unders, futures, and so much more. It's every sport. It's every game. Dozens of ways to wager at FanDuel. Hundreds of ways to wager at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon, or check out the easy-to-use FanDuel Sportsbook app. Tip off the NBA season. Get involved in the NFL season as well. FanDuel, it's an official partner of the NFL. All right, I gave you all the assignment. Pick your favorite Wolves prop. And just since we were talking about win totals, Wolves are at 44.5. That's the official win total. To win 50, which, last year would have gotten them a 3 seed, they are plus 250 to win 50. So not the most far-fetched number of all time. But I don't think we've started with Ben Beecken yet. So let's go back to Ben with your favorite FanDuel prop. And I'll write these down just so we have the receipts.
Yeah. If you want to talk win total, I go over on that. I think I have him at 48, 49 wins is kind of where I'd be. I don't know that I'd take the bet at 50, although those odds aren't bad. My favorite prop bet is Karl-Anthony Towns to average 10 plus rebounds is plus 240. And last season, I mean, like you look at him historically, his first 6 years in the league, he averaged an easy 10 boards a game. 2 years ago, he was 9.8 rebounds per game in a mostly healthy season. That was obviously before Rudy. Last year was only 8.1 rebounds per game in only 29 games with the presence of Rudy Gobert. That's an area he's got to be better in. The Wolves as a team have to be better in. They've been a bottom 3 defensive rebounding team each of the last couple seasons, even with Rudy Gobert last year. So assuming Towns has better health, yes, I know Rudy Gobert is there, but we're not asking him to grab 12 boards a game like he did 5-6 years ago. We're asking him to grab 10 a game for this prop, and at plus 240, I think that's a really attainable number. I mean, somebody's got to rebound the ball for the Wolves, and Towns is going to play a lot of minutes. He's a better rebounder than Nas. I think he's going to get 10 a game, and plus 240 is a good bet.
Ron.
Yeah, the one I was going to say was, I think they can definitely get over 44 wins. That's the one. But the one I went back to was rebounds. It has Rudy Gobert plus, 11 rebounds plus, and it has Karl-Anthony Towns at 10. For Karl-Anthony Towns to hit 10, he was at 8.1 last year. Can he stay healthy? Can he crash the boards? Can he do what he's supposed to do at 6'10" to 7 feet, which is dominate the boards when you have another guy that's dominating the boards, Rudy Gobert? When you go back to, and I hate to do this, but when you go back to David Robinson and Tim Duncan, that's what they did well. They controlled the boards. Offensive rebounds are just as important, if not more important, than defensive rebounds. One, you're getting more points opportunities, you're getting more chances to shoot. So on top of that 44 wins, I think they can get that. So I would go over on the 44, but then I'm also going to put a little bit of money. I don't know if I'm going to put in my prop, in my parlay, because I don't want to screw it up with Cat getting 9 rebounds. But I think Cat to hit 10 rebounds and Rudy Gobert to hit 11. I like that prop for those two.
Jack Borman.
Do you want a long shot or I guess an easier?
I love long shots. Give me a long shot. Give me a number where I can win my mortgage.
All right, I'll give you one of each. I'll start small. So I have the Timberwolves to win the Northwest Division at plus 550. I think this is frankly a pretty absurd line, considering that really they only have to worry about one team, and that's the Denver Nuggets. And you think about the fact that Denver lost Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and Vlatko Cancar. Chanchar's out with an ACL injury, and they lost Bruce Brown and Jeff Green to free agency. Those are 3 vets that played for them last year. They're replacing those guys with younger, unproven players. Jamal Murray hasn't played more than 65 games since 18-19, and Michael Porter Jr. has never played more than 62 games in a season. They are a Jokic missing 2 to 3 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks, or Murray missing time away from just kind of saying, you know what, we've already won the title. Let's just get into the playoffs and we'll go from there. I think at plus 550, like that's a pretty, enticing number there, just for, something totally understandable to happen to the Nuggets. And the Nuggets could be, the 4 seed, and the Wolves could be the 3 seed, and that's all you need. So I like that one. And then for a player long shot here, Rudy Gobert to lead the NBA in blocks per game is plus 5,500. So Rudy Gobert is I don't think he's led the league in blocks since like 16 or 17 or 15, 16. And Jaren Jackson Jr. led the league in blocks per game at 3.0 last year for the Grizzlies. We've already seen Rudy Gobert kind of be more of a playmaker and try to block more shots. I think he's the type of guy that's heard everybody say he's lost a step. He's not blocking as many shots. Walker Kessler is better than him. I think that, the perimeter horses that they have defensively, keeping guys out of the paint, allowing Rudy Gobert to be a little bit more aggressive on the back end of the defense. Now with Cat being in there for a full season to help rebound, it would not surprise me at all to see Rudy Gobert kind of get back up to that high 2, maybe pushing 3, to point where maybe you don't win that bet. But if that's one that you track later on during the season, that's one where you kind of have in your back pocket, and then maybe you can turn around and bet, someone else if it becomes a 2 or a 3 man race there. So that's one that I think is pretty crazy, but also enticing.
Yeah, that'd be a mortgage payoff right there. That's for sure. I do think it's interesting though. Like we're all very high on the Wolves, right? But in that Northwest Division category, they view the Thunder pretty much at the same level as the Timberwolves. I mean, they're plus 600, Wolves are plus 550. So I think we felt this way the last 2 years. That last year the Wolves were disrespected in the odds, And then the whole season kind of got blown up with the cat injury, and they ended up kind of underperforming on the expectations, which we thought were low. And now this year, again, the expectations, I think, are fairly low or modest on the Wolves nationally. I think we're more optimistic locally about this team. Reggie, give us your favorite FanDuel prop, man.
I guess I'll go a little bit of a long shot too. So Karl-Anthony Towns said that this is Ant's team. Like, he said it. I heard it. I seen it. Points per game leader for 2023-24, Anthony Edwards plus 5,000. I'll go with that. You know, I think coming off of his performance in the summertime, like, I think he's more confident. Like, this thing is, he's a bald head away from cosplaying Michael Jordan at this point. Like, he's got the hoop earrings, he's got the big baggy clothes. Like, he is like I don't know if he's trying to be like MJ at this point, but like that is certainly looking like the case with how he's like carrying himself, the things that he's wearing. I just think it's interesting, you know, when you see people on Twitter basically making Ant bald and calling him the MJ of the Timberwolves. So but no, all fun aside, I just think that this is a year for him to really establish himself as the alpha on this team after establishing himself as the alpha on that summer team as well. And look, why not Ant? Why not? Why can't he go out there and lead the league in scoring? And I think if he plays up to the level that we expect him to play, I think the Wolves are going to be in really good shape and they're going to be a dangerous team. And you know, talking about the Thunder who get Chet back and have all this depth and growing young talent and all that stuff, I think that's going to be a situation where you're going to see the Wolves kind of distinguish themselves a little bit in that division. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Ant does this year, and so I'll take that plus 5,000 with him leading the league in scoring. I know it's a bit of a long shot, but you know, why not? That's what we're doing today.
That's fun. That's fun. I was looking at another Ant long shot at being a 30-point scorer at plus 600. Now, I get a little nervous about that because without Cat last year, where you would expect more volume from Ant, he still only produced 24.6. So he would have to take an even more drastic step in terms of volume. You'd have to, and last year was his most accurate shooting season from the field and from 3-point range, and still not even 25 points a game. So I don't know if 30 is in the what?
It's gonna happen.
I don't know if 30 is in the cards, man. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that you're not going to win your bet, Reggie, but I don't know. I do like 28 points a game at plus 160. That might be a little more realistic, but yeah, I think just betting on Ant is just a good bet. I mean, that is a stock that is going up right now. In closing, we have about 3 minutes remaining on the program. Thanks, by the way, for watching, and please subscribe on YouTube and check out the audio on the Locked On Wolves feed. John Krasinski, we love his reporting. He only reports truths, so I believe this to be true. Naz Reid says he grew 2 inches since last year. The man is how old? 24? 25? 24 years old. That is not an age where you typically see growth, but he says he went from 6'8" to 6'10". Fact or crap, Reggie? Are we believing this from Naz Reid?
Why not? Why not? It's Naz Reid's world, man. We're all just living in it. You know, I always saw like 6'9", so he basically like split the difference between the two, and so if he's gonna say 6'10", why not? Look, I went all throughout my 20s thinking that I was 6'2", 6'2 and a half, and then I went to the doctor one day and they were like, "Nope, we measured you. It's right here. You're 6'4", and this was back before I had the hair too, so I had the short hair, and they told me I was 6'4". I was like, dang, I've been telling people 6'2 and a half, 6'3 maybe. You know, so sometimes, you know, you just, I don't know. You just don't think about it too much. But as a guy who probably gets measured quite a bit just because of his profession, I think it's kind of crazy, you know, that we don't necessarily know how exactly tall he is. But look, if he said he's 6'10", I believe him because Naz Reid can do what he wants.
Ben.
I'm going to call BS on him saying he's 6'8". I went back and looked at the combine, or was 6'8". I went back and looked at the combine measurements for a few years ago, and he was 6'8 3/4 without shoes and 6'9.5" with shoes. So he was already 6. And like I've heard, who knows what they're actually listing in the media guide, but 6'9.5" with shoes at the draft. He's 6'10" now. So he maybe grew a little, but I don't think he grew more than a half an inch, maybe an inch. So I think he was underselling that 6'8" to give himself the boost, or the bigger growth margin, I guess.
2 inches in 6 months is crazy. Ron, you ever had a growth spurt like that?
Not since I was like in the 9th grade. When I was in the 9th grade, I was 5'6", and then by my sophomore year, I was 6'2". So it can happen. I don't think it happened the way he thinks. I think this would happen. I think Ben just said that, or Jack just said it. He might have grown like a half an inch. And then he also called his shoe company and said, "Hey, what shoes you have for this season? I need to get measured." And they sent him with a little higher, whether it's an air bubble, whether it's a little bit more foam posit, whatever it is, that added to it, because we know NBA players get to get measured with their shoes on if they choose to, because we know that's been the whole knock on Kevin Durant, that he continues to get measured with his shoes off because he doesn't want to be seen as 6'10", 6'11". He wants to be 6'9". And so that's going to be the key, I think, when the Suns play the Timberwolves. We'll see Kevin Durant and Naz Reid. Kevin Durant is taller than Naz Reid. Heck no, you are not 6'10", buddy. If Naz Reid is taller than Kevin Durant or same height, then yeah, we'll give him 6'9". Because Kevin Durant clearly, because you see Kevin Durant next to Boogie Cousins in that USA photo, and Kevin Durant was taller than Boogie, and Boogie was listed at 6'11", which I think is a lie as well. So I don't know about NBA heights because they get to measure however they want to measure. Football, you have to take your shoes off, your socks off. You have to put your heels down, your toes up. You have to tuck your chin in and put your shoulders down. Like they are very accurate with NFL. NBA, it's like, hey, whatever you want to be, buddy, you be that. We'll write it down and we'll move on to the next season. So I think in half an inch and then with some shoe addition to it, I don't think he grew 2 inches though.
If Naz hadn't already signed his contract, Jack, I would think he would be angling for a little negotiating tactic here. Like if he had grown before the contract extension, maybe he could have milked some more money.
I'd be telling you the same thing. I mean, I grew 3 inches last year as a 24-year-old. So Naz is just joining me and Reggie. No, I'm just kidding. But, I think it's all just PR at this point. I mean, Jaden McDaniels has been taller than Karl-Anthony Towns since he came into the league. That's like my biggest stay woke that I've seen. I've always thought Jaden's taller than Cap from seeing him in the locker room next to each other. It's all just a game of.
So you're saying Cat's lying?
No, I'm saying Jaden's lying. He's doing the KD thing where he doesn't want to be the 7 foot guy.
But he wants to be 6'13" like KG. That was the KG thing.
Yep. So I think it's all just, hey, Sam, what do you want to be listed at? Hey, Reggie, what do you want to be listed at? And guys are like, put me down. Like Draymond's going to list himself as like 6'3" next year, probably. So it's all just fun and games. But like Ben said, I think he's just always been 6'10".
Reggie Wilson, Jack Borman, Ben Beecken, Ron Johnson. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Wolves Talk every Wednesday here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Thanks for watching. Next week at this time, we'll be talking about the season opener coming up a week from today.
Zach LaVine's going to drop 40. No, I'm joking.
Thanks so much for watching and listening. We'll talk to you next time.